Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this Ural 4320 truck. This is a 1/100th or 15mm scale plastic snap-together kit by Zvezda. This is a gaming model, and while it could be used in any game for which you need one of these trucks, it's intended for Zvezda's game Hot War, which I guess is the opposite of Cold War. The back of the box is pretty standard for a Zvezda kit in this scale. There are some pictures of the built but unpainted model at different angles, information like the parts count, 29, and the length, 7.5 centimeters. Simple but effective. Inside the box we find 2 sprues inside a plastic bag and a sheet of paper, and as with pretty much every other Zvezda kit I've built, there are just enough parts to build the Ural. No more, no less. Sorry Bits box. While there are no optional parts for the bits box other than the flag, the parts that are here are quite neat and well moulded. There are mould lines as always, but they're not especially prominent and shouldn't need much by the way of cleanup. While the details are fairly decent, it's by no means a highly detailed display piece. It's not intended to be, it's a gaming piece. That's not a bad thing of course, it's just that you should set your expectations accordingly. What you'll get out of this kit is a little truck that should go together very easily, paint up nicely, and look good as a representation of this kind of truck on the gaming table. The instructions are more or less what I would expect from one of these kits. Fairly simple exploded diagrams breaking the entire build into about 5 steps. It's not a complex build at all, so you don't really need elaborate instructions. Now that we've seen all of that, let's glue some plastic together. We start with the frame, which is one piece. This is nice because it means everything that we put onto the frame should be all lined up nice and straight. The first thing I do is to press the front grille and headlamp part into place. This is a snap kit, so the parts should stay together just fine with friction alone. But to be sure, and to appease the glue god, I apply glue, and I try to apply it on the inside where possible. This is extra thin glue so it will seep into the gap between the parts and form a nice bond. Of course, some spots need to be glued before installing the part, like the central socket for this mudguard part, I guess you would call it. A bit more glue around the outer edges, and it's on. Next comes this little framey part. This will hold and support the truck's cab. Nothing tricky about putting this on. I'm not totally sure I've done this in the correct order, and you might like to do it differently, but what I did next was install the windscreen and hood part. I followed that with the side parts. It was a little bit of a struggle, though not at all a major one, to get these parts on and lined up neatly with the hood part. I did a bunch of nudging, and eventually I got the parts together nice and neat. When I was satisfied with this, I added glue to the connections on the framey bit and around the engine hood, just to make sure that everything stays together good and proper. The rear of the cab comes next, because why not? It'll help to keep the weather out. This took a bit of pressure to get into place, but into place it does go. More glue, and then it's time for the roof. This is pretty simple to install. There's an obvious mounting peg for it, pressure and glue to reduce the chance of bothersome gaps, and we've got a roof. The crew will be pleased. Next, just behind the cab, we can install the spare wheel and what seems to be a toolbox, or is it a fuel tank, or maybe something else entirely. At any rate, the part goes into place nice and easy. A snorkel comes next, or what I'm pretty sure is a snorkel. Unfortunately, the video here is a bit blurry, so apologies for that. This part is small and a bit fiddly, but not impossible to install, clearly. Next comes the truck bed, which is going to be really helpful when we want to load this thing up with goods or shooty mans. There are guide pins for this, and with plenty of glue, the part goes on nice and easily and should stay there. I follow this with the wall parts. A word of caution, because these are snap kits you do need to apply pressure to the parts to push them together. That makes sense. As you see, I bent and almost broke the forward wall part by pressing too hard. My suggestion would be, don't do that. The way I applied pressure after this was with the back of my knife on the lower portion of the part. The side and rear parts went on with much less bending and damage, which is always nice, and once they're firmly in place, I apply glue. It's, unsurprisingly, pretty easy to get this together and looking good. If you do happen to mess this up though, there is a canvas cover part, and you could use that to hide some damage, but we'll see that later. For now, we need to add some relatively unimportant parts. Here's the front axle and suspension part. As with all of the other parts, there are guide pins and getting this in the right place is easy. I would say don't push down too hard on it though, it could break. It looks to me like it's sitting a bit too low, but that's as far as it will go, and that's how it's meant to be. The rear axle set is installed in much the same way. It's probably not going to just fall off. Not without some effort, but like I always say with these kits, I can't imagine any time that I'm going to want to disassemble it, so it might as well be glued together. Wheels come next, and these are really straightforward. I did have to apply a bit of pressure to get these to go all the way onto the axles, but I don't think you'll find that too challenging. The result is really good, and it should improve the truck's mobility quite a bit. Then comes what I would say is an unusually small detail part for one of these Zvezda kits, a searchlight. There's no mounting hole for this, so you've got to eyeball it. I guess this is an optional part really, but I figured why not add it. And finally, it's time to make the canvas cover. It's pretty simple to put together. There's an internal frame part with pins and sockets to connect the two halves of the cover together. To me this seems like it's maybe a little bit over-engineered, but it goes together easily enough and that's what matters. There is a bit of a large obvious gap along the top of this, and that's kind of annoying, but that should be pretty easy to fill in with putty when it's time for painting. I slide it over the cargo walls. Surely there's a better thing to call those? Nope. And that's the Zvezda 15mm scale plastic Ural 4320 truck completed. I think it's a good little model. It's obviously a gaming piece, and that's a role it should fill very well. You'll certainly be able to tell what it is and what it does on the gaming table. It is simple, but it still has a pretty decent level of detail, and I would say you could improve upon that with whatever methods of paint trickery you might like to employ. While it's a pretty cool looking truck, it is slightly outside of the time period I usually model, and I don't actually plan on using this for any games myself, and I'm not sure if there are any alternatives to this kit in 15mm scale. Fortunately, this kit is fairly cheap, a little bit more expensive than the other Zvezda kits I've built on this channel, but not by much, and like most of the Zvezda 15mm stuff that I've encountered so far, it was a pleasant kit to put together. It didn't need too much in the way of cleanup, and for the most part everything went together nice and easy, bending that forward wall part being the exception, and that's probably just me not knowing my own strength. Be careful when applying pressure and you should be just fine. It was also, unsurprisingly, fairly quick to build. Not that it's a race or anything, and I'm always going to recommend that you take your time and enjoy your hobbying, but you could probably whip together a swarm of these in an afternoon if you were inclined to do so. It's been a while since I actually built this, but I'm pretty sure it only took one fairly short stream to get done. Speaking of stream, if you want to hang out with me and the good folks in chat and watch me build models like this one, you can do that over on Twitch. There's a link to my channel in the description below. Give me a follow and come by next time I'm live. It'll be good times. If you have any questions or comments, it would be great to see those in the comments section below. If you've built one of these or any other cool models and you want to share, why not drop by our Discord community? We would love to see what you've done. And if you've not already done so, why not subscribe, follow, ring the bell, become a patron, or maybe just come say hi on Discord or Twitch. Links to all of my things are in the description below, and, as always, I shall return soon. So, until then, be excellent to each other, and thank you for watching. Farewell.